Hi, I'm
Hi,
Vanessa,
I'm Jacinta.
and this is Strange Colony podcast,
Do-do-do-do-do-do-do.
even. We are two shit talking Aussie mums with a passion for true crime, and every week we are going to come tell you a story.
Story time. True crime story time.
Story time. We need to make that
That
a
is a
thing.
thing.
It's going to be a thing. It's a thing.
Yeah, I think since we have Dead Set now, we kind of need to separate this segment too. So, true crime story time. I like it. I'm with it.
Rebranding. I'm here for it.
It's not the first time we've had to.
No, certainly not. All right. This week, I will be telling you the story of the mystery of the Somerton
Oh, a
Man.
mystery. You bad girl, you.
Absolutely.
Oh.
I do love me a good mystery.
I'm going to be like that meme that we posted about the unsolved case, and at the end when it's like unsolved, be like, so I'm gonna assume straight off the bat mystery means unsolved.
Yeah, the mystery gang are not unmasking anyone at the end of this episode.
I like the way you put that.
So, the Somerton Man is a mystery story about a man.
Did not see that coming. Mind blown.
And that's all they've got for you this week. I'm out.
Men
No.
are a mystery.
And he was found on the Somerton Park beach in 1948.
Oh, so our mystery man is the victim.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm here for some tea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, have a sip. Somerton Park is a suburb just south of Adelaide in South Australia. It was December 1st in 1948 at 6:30 a.m. when a body on the Somerton Park beach was reported to police.
Oh.
The man was lying on the sand, on his back, his head was resting against a seawall behind him, legs extended, ankles crossed, and that's just how they found him.
So, like, dude was posed.
It just looked like he died whilst, sleeping on the beach. Yeah.
Huh.
Like, he could have passed out drunk or something like that, Have you been there at Glenelg, though?
No.
In his collar of his coat was an unlit cigarette. His pockets, he had, like, an unused second-class rail ticket from Adelaide to Henley Beach.
Okay.
Which, yeah. He's slightly off task here. He had a half-empty packet of juicy fruits. Do you remember juicy fruits?
That sounds familiar. Were they the lollies that squirted on you?
No, these were like a flavored chewing gum.
Oh, actually, yes. Oh, they were terrible.
Yeah, I remember because my dad was in the military. They regularly featured in the rat packs.
Yeah.
The meal rations. Yeah. Yeah.
Chewing helped.
He also had a packet of cigarettes, and there were 7 cigarettes in there, but they were of a different brand to what the packet had. He also had a comb on him, a bus ticket that may or may not have been used. They couldn't tell at that point, and a box of matches that wasn't even full. And that's all he had on him.
Okay. I'm getting nothing from this. Mystery. Actually, I'm kind of getting, like, dude who comes up to you at Elizabeth train station. asking if you've got any ciggies from this
Completely different era, but
vibe. It's a
yeah.
vibe.
that
And
vibe,
to be fair,
yes.
I have also been the dude who comes up to somebody and asks if there was any ciggies back in the day. So, so
Oh
shade, but no shade.
no. I was always the asshole who was like, "Not buy your own."
I'm not even remotely
I've
surprised.
got ciggies, but not for
I
you.
would totally even roll. I would, because I've been in that position, I would roll them for them.
Oh, you are just too kind. I was never.
Don't tell people. Yuck.
Got a reputation to uphold. Ah. So, the next day, some witnesses came forward, spoke to police. They had seen a man on the beach on November 30th, so the day before he was reported to the
Right.
police. And he was laying in the same position that he had been found in.
Oh, so is he already dead?
Not sure.
Oh.
There was a couple who claimed to see him at around 7 p.m. They said, though, he was alive because he did extend his right arm and then just let it drop.
Yeah, that's
But
the kind of movement living people make.
Yeah. I would assume that a dead person wouldn't do that.
Oh, yeah, but I wouldn't assume a living person would just.
It seems a bit odd. But that's what they reported that they saw. Another couple said to see him between 7:30 and 8 p.m. ish. And during that time he was in their view, they didn't see him move at all.
Fair. Okay.
They thought it odd that he wasn't responding to the mosquitoes and other bugs and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But because he could have been in a drunken stupor or asleep, they didn't bother to go and inspect that any further.
Yeah, I wouldn't either.
Me either. And so, in any case, the man's body hadn't moved at all since witnesses saw him the night before and the day he was discovered dead.
Ew. Okay.
Side note, in 1959, another witness came forward with a report that they had seen a well-dressed man carrying another well-dressed man along Somerton Park Beach on that same night.
Oh, so we're back to thinking he's posed.
Yeah.
I have a whole theory now.
I'm going to let
Continue.
Cool, I hope that keeps changing. Pathologist John Burton Cleland described the man as being of a more British appearance, somewhere in his late 40s and in pretty good shape. He was 180 centimeters tall, which is 5'11". He had fair, gingerish hair that was greying at the temples.
I'm sorry. I'm laughing my ass off because you've just destroyed a lot of men by saying that that's 5'11".
6 foot is 183-ish centimeters.
Yeah, oh, you're bang on. But the amount of times I've been told, "Oh, I'm 6 foot." My own husband even tried that ish on me when we first met. Oh, I'm 6 foot. No, you're not.
No. No, I mean, you're close,
Very,
but
very
no.
close, baby. Sorry, I had to.
That's fine. Back to his description. He had broad shoulders, narrow waist, grey eyes.
5'11".
His hands showed no signs of, being a manual labourer. And he had well-pronounced calf muscles like those of a dancer.
Oop.
like classical ballet
Oh,
dancer.
okie dokie. The plot thickens.
And he kept his face clean shaven.
I now have 2 alternate theories.
Yay! His clothing was like just a white shirt, white and blue tie, brown pants, socks and shoes, and brown woolen jumper. So he was relatively well dressed. He also had a double-breasted coat.
Okay.
And that was tailored in an American fashion. It was not local to Australian fashion at the time.
Right.
And curiously, the labels from all the clothing had been removed.
Huh.
He had no ID on him, and his dental records weren't able to be matched to any known persons.
Wow.
At this point, the police are thinking suicide. But suicide how?
Do they have a cause of death at this stage?
I'm about to jump into the autopsy.
Okay. Right. Oh, wait. Hang on. They think suicide. Okay. I mean, I'm not thinking suicide, but okay.
No, I'm not thinking suicide at this point too, but that's what the police were thinking. And this is in 1948.
Yeah.
So different mindsets, different ideas of forensics and how crimes are committed, people's mindsets and all that sort of stuff.
Fair enough.
During the autopsy, they found the last thing he ate was approximately 3 to 4 hours before he actually died. And that was a pasty.
That's very South Aussie.
Yeah. The pathologist, Dr. Dwyer, and quote, was convinced the death could not be natural, end quote. But all the tests that they had available at the time came back negative for anything in his blood work and all that sort of stuff. But, no gunshot wounds, no stab wounds, like no physical trauma to the body.
Yep.
So the pathologist concluded that he had died of a barbiturate or highly soluble hypnotic, something that was highly soluble within the body, so would pass through quickly.
Wouldn't leave anything.
And they wouldn't be able to pick it up. But having said that, this is also a long time ago. It's over 70 years ago now.
Shush. That you went there.
Yeah, I went there. So now poisoning is the suspected cause of death, and they don't think that the pasty was how the poison was delivered to the system.
Okay.
They were smart enough to have the body embalmed to preserve it, because they did have to then go and have it buried and all that, but they have kept this body so that it was able to be preserved.
In case it needed exhuming?
Correct. Bang on. No other progress was made in the case until January 14th the next year, so 1949. And a brown suitcase was discovered at the Adelaide railway station by staff working there. The case had been checked into the cloakroom at 11 a.m. on the 30th of November. And that is the day that everybody had sighted the man. The case also had all the labels removed. So the date that it got checked in and all the labels removed were how they suspected that it was belonging to this case.
Okay.
The case only held dressing gowns, slippers, pajamas, shaving items, underwear, another pair of pants. They had sand in the cuffs still. An electrician's screwdriver, a table knife, like a butter knife, that had been sharpened so that it was pointy on the end. Yes, that's exactly what I thought. In my notes, I actually wrote it sharpened to a stabby point.
Yep.
There were scissors with a sharp stabby point as well, and a stenciling brush like that used by a third officer on a merchant ship for like labeling things.
Sorry, repeat that?
A stenciling brush used by like what a third officer on a merchant ship would use.
For labeling things. Huh. Okay.
Correct.
It's getting interesting.
Yes, there was also some orange thread of a type that was not available in Australia at the time, and it was the same thread that had been used to repair the lining of the trousers that the man was wearing at the time of his death.
Huh.
And so from all of this, they're like, that's his case. All the labels from the clothes had been removed in the case as well.
Yep.
However, police found the name T. Keane, spelled two different ways, but it was Keane as in key, Keane, on a tie.
Yep.
Oh, excuse me. And on a laundry bag. And Kean on a singlet.
Uh-huh.
They also found some dry cleaning marks. I actually went and had to look this up because it's been a long time since I've owned anything that was dry clean only. Dry cleaning marks are a coding system used by dry cleaners, any institutions you might enter, and ships' laundries to identify the owners of the item. So they put like a little code on the items. The code is in the book with a name written next to it. So it's like it's a sequence of numbers. It's usually 4 digits, a slash, and then a single digit. And this was quite common back in that day as a way to identify property, people found on the street, and all that sort of stuff. Police weren't sure if the labelled items were left labelled on purpose or if it was just something that was overlooked. This was still just after wartime and clothing rationing was still in place. So it was common for labels and tags to be removed on second-hand items. It was also noted that there was no socks in the case. And no written letters in spite of the fact that there was stationery there, but just because they're stationery doesn't mean that, you know, you're going to keep letters that you write to people.
Yes.
Getting a bit stiff shit in here. There was no T. Keane missing in any English-speaking country at the time. Also, they did use the dry cleaning markers to try and trace him. But it proved fruitless. There was nothing in the whole of the country.
Right.
And yeah, so all that they could determine from the case was that there was an American coat in there that could not have been imported. After checking incoming train records from Melbourne, Sydney, and Port Augusta, police thought he had arrived in Adelaide and showered at the city baths before returning to the station for the Henley Beach train, which he either missed or did not catch because that ticket was unused. After this, he checked his case into the cloakroom and caught a bus to Glenelg, which explains the bus ticket. The inquest, which ran a few days after his death, right up until the 17th of June 1949, was conducted by Coroner Thomas Erskine Cleland. I love that name, Erskine. And he re-examined the body. This was before it was embalmed. And noted that the shoes were clean for someone who had been walking around all day. Like, they were too clean and too nice, and they'd been recently polished, so you would see if any dirt was on the surface of them. And he believed that the body had been dumped. It was brought to the beach after the man's death because of the state of the shoes. as well as there being no signs of convulsions or vomiting, because that is a very common sign of
For sure.
poisoning. He also believed that none of the witnesses could 100% confirm the man on the beach was the same man seen walking around in Glenelg that evening.
Yeah.
Like, because you see a dude and they're well dressed, but
There's probably more dudes around that are well dressed.
exactly, pretty common for the
Average
era.
height,
Oh,
average
yeah,
build.
average height, average build.
Yeah.
Yeah. Professor Cedric Stanton Hicks, who is a professor of physiology and pharmacology at the University of Adelaide, testified that there were drugs that were highly toxic in very small oral doses that wouldn't be identified if they were tested for, that were available over the counter at pharmacies at the time.
Actual fuck.
Yeah.
I mean, bleep.
You don't even need a reason to give the pharmacist to obtain these drugs either. You could just walk into a chemist and ask
Give me
for
the
them.
super poisonous thing that can't be traced. Got it.
At the time, they didn't release those details to the public because they didn't want people to then go out start poisoning people.
The hell were they using them for otherwise, though?
I don't
How many people
know.
died accidentally?
And for reference,
How many people
sorry?
died accidentally?
Oh, these two drugs mimic heart failure too.
Oh.
For reference, these two drugs are digitalis and Albane, and they are cardinalide type cardiac glycosides. They are not used regularly in treatment now because we have safer drugs, because these two are very easily toxic to the body.
Right.
But they are steroidal, and they used to be used to treat, what were they used to treat? Congestive heart failure and arrhythmia.
Right. But they can mimic a heart attack.
Yes, because
Too much of a good thing.
look, I'm on heart drugs. If I do too much, it then gives me the same problems that it's trying to correct. These are the same, but it's it's a lot easier to overdose on them. So they're just very dangerous.
Yeah.
But he also stated at the inquest that the lack of vomiting near the body made him believe that, maybe it wasn't that, or it didn't happen at that location. And that the man's last movements of like the arm flailing could have been last convulsions before death.
Oh. Well, I mean, that makes a bit more sense.
It does. Yeah, exactly. Like, if your heart's starting to like clap out and you're just like out of it.
I mean, you probably would seem on the drunk side too if you're in the stages of just shutting down.
Exactly. Exactly right. And it was pretty early in the inquiry that our pathologist, Mr. Cleland, stated that, end quote, he was prepared to find that he died from poison, and that the poison was likely a glucoside, and that it was not accidentally administered, but I cannot say it was administered by the deceased or some other person, end quote. Despite all of this, no formal cause of death could be determined. Before they embalmed him, a plaster cast was made of his head and shoulders in a hope to identify the man. So before they threw him in a grave, they made sure they had like a bust. Because the only other way that they had was the pictures from the autopsy table, and they're, not the best. Also, during the inquest, a rolled
Try that
up.
again.
Am I boring you? No, it's late in the day, I know.
And I feel
Right.
sexy times.
At the time of the inquest, so whilst the inquest is happening, they're still investigating things. A piece of rolled up paper, that's going to become a thing now, was found rolled up in a sewn-in fob pocket in the man's pants. It had the words "Taman should" printed on it.
Uh-huh.
Officials from the public library translated it to mean ended or finished. It was the final page from Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. And the other side of the paper was blank. I don't know what this book is. Apparently it's a book of poetry. It was pretty obscure at the time.
So even more so
and
now.
Yeah. But there's a few people in this story who are familiar with the works.
Right.
Curiouser and
Indeed.
curiouser. The police released a photo of the scrap of paper to the press. After this public appeal, a copy of the Rubaiyat with the last page torn out was found. The detective who led the initial investigation was really protective of witnesses and used pseudonyms for them in everything. So he called the man with the book Ronald Francis, and he has never officially been identified. The book was found in his parked car on Jetty Road in Glenelg, in the rear footwell or in the back seat, depends on where you read.
Huh.
He had been on a drive with his brother-in-law. They went out, did some things around Glenelg, came back. When they returned, the book was in the car, and they just assumed that the book belonged to the other person and that they hadn't noticed it before.
Right. Sure.
So Francis didn't think the book was connected to the case until the public appeal was made. Some people say the book was found a couple of weeks before the body was found, like some newspapers reported that, while others have said the book was found just after the man. And the timing of this finding can lead your conclusions different ways. So the overall theme of the Rubaiyat is to live life to the fullest and with no regrets. So the police are back to the theme of the suicide theory.
Dumbasses.
But in the back of the book of Francis's copy of this book were 5 lines of text, and it looked like random letters. The second line had been struck out, like when you make a mistake, because this is before erasers and whiteout. First they thought it was a foreign language. And then they realized it was more like a code.
Duh.
So then they got code experts in, and they couldn't figure out what the text was meant to be. The cryptographers ended up stating that it's potential that the text could be the meaningless product of a disturbed mind.
AKA, we're not smart enough to figure this out, but we don't want to say that.
So we're going to call him crazy.
He's crazy. He's just writing random shit because I can't figure it out, and if I can't figure it out, it's not something on purpose.
Exactly. The back of the book also yielded a phone number. The number belonged to Jessica Ellen Thompson, also known as Jo, Jestin, a bunch of other pseudonyms. I'm going to call her Jessica just to keep everything simple and able to be followed, because otherwise I get confused. Right. She was born Jessica Harkness. She's from Sydney. At the time of the man's death, though, she lived in Mosley Street in Glenelg, It's about 400 meters north of the beach where he was found. In her interview, she denied knowing the man and didn't know why he would have her phone number or want to visit her, because he had tried to visit her, or they suspect he tried to visit her. At some point earlier in 1948, an unknown man had tried to contact her at her house. She wasn't home, but her neighbor was. So she told police, go ask her about it.
Right.
But she was rather evasive and just,
yeah, fair.
Not me. Jessica asked the police not to keep any records of her name or to release any of her deets to any third parties like journos, whatnot. She claimed it would be embarrassing and harmful to her reputation if she were known to be associated with the case. After a while, police thought that maybe her real name was the key to decrypting the unknown 5 lines from the book, or cryptographers actually thought that might be the case, like down the track, because people have picked this up over time and tried to solve it. But yeah, they did show her the plaster cast of the man's bust. Detective Lean, who was the lead detective, claimed she looked taken aback and like she was going to faint at the sight of it. But she still said she didn't know the man. She was familiar with the Rubaiyat and had a copy herself that she gave to a patient while she was working in the Royal North Shore Hospital in Sydney during World War II. His name was Lieutenant Alf Boxall.
Okay.
And so then they're starting to think that Boxall is the man, because they'd kind of had a bit of a thing. He wrote to her after she moved to Melbourne, but she replied, I'm getting married, blah, 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 all this sort of stuff. And then they ceased contact with each other.
Right.
So yeah, Boxall, the police are thinking that he's now the man on the beach. But they managed to locate him in July 1949, very much alive in Sydney.
Right.
And he still had his copy of the Rubaiyat very much intact.
Right.
And his copy of the book was also a different edition. So there have been many theories over time that the man was a spy.
That's the obvious one.
Yeah. And given that all the evidence previously stated, plus near Adelaide were 2 known sites of interest, because this is just after World War II. One of them was a uranium mine, and the other one was a military research facility.
If it's 48, this is the end of World War II, even.
Yeah. I thought we were just after.
I thought it ended in 49.
I could be wrong.
You're probably right. Google.
Yeah. Second of September 1945 was when it ended.
No, I had 48 in mind. Or 49 in mind. Oh, hang on. I feel like there's a reason that 49 sticks in mind.
I don't know, but the Cold War started in 47. So this was now during the Cold War. Around this time, Australian security agencies were in the process of reorganisation.
I'm sorry. I didn't do it on purpose.
I'm running with it now, fuck it.
Yeah.
So there was a bunch of them, and they were just essentially consolidating into what we now know as ASIO.
Right.
And this also resulted in a crackdown on Soviet spies in Australia.
Yes.
Because we got more organized in terms of our intelligence.
I find that very hard to believe, but okay.
I mean intelligence as
I
in,
know.
like, military intelligence, not, like, overall intelligence.
I know.
Also, there are theories that Boxall was supposedly undertaking intelligence work during World War II, but there's not a lot to support that theory. It's just people picking shit at his answers during interviews.
I was going to say, being that it was 48, and as you said, the aftermath of the Second World War, there's nothing to say that our victim wasn't a spy from the World War.
Correct. Correct, because you never know how long they've been in the country, all that sort of stuff. Oh, I need to stretch. This is so uncomfortable.
My favourite theory that I have, it's utterly ridiculous. It makes no sense, but I'm just going to put it out there because I thought of it, is that he's a Russian spy posing as a ballet dancer who was killed, and he had his shoes changed to take him onto the beach. And the reason he did the whole is because the person who carried him onto the beach, like realized that there was witnesses about, so they had to, like, dig themselves a little pit next to the body, and then, like, they saw people that were interested, and so they're like, hey!
God, that is so fucking ridiculous. I love it.
Them off the scent, and then they had to, like, fill in their hole as they got away.
I mean, this story is, like, so cloak and dagger, but you just take it to, like, that next.
I watch too much anime. Way too much.
The man was buried in West Terrace Cemetery in Adelaide. The Salvation Army were the ones who conducted the service, and the South Australian Grandstand Bookmakers Association paid for the service so that he wasn't given a pauper's burial.
Yeah, stuff people who
Years
are actually
later,
tall.
yeah, exactly. Like, this is high profile. This is good press for us. Years later, flowers began appearing on the grave, and a woman was seen leaving the cemetery. Leaving the cemetery, not necessarily leaving the flowers. But when questioned by police, she said she didn't know anything about the man. I mean, of course. It was also around this time where a receptionist named Ina Harvey from the Strathmore Hotel, which was opposite the railway station, had said that a strange man stayed in either room 21 or 23 for a few days. He checked out November 30th, 1948. Description of him is he spoke English and carried a black bag similar to that of a musician or doctor. A nosy employee had looked inside the case and said he found something that resembled a needle. I mean, I don't know how much credit we give this.
No.
And there was this random inmate from New Zealand who was in a New Zealand prison at the time who claimed to know the identity of the man, and that was in November of 1959. Pretty sure he was trying to get released.
Yeah. I've got to circle back for a second. Like, okay, so they questioned a woman for leaving the cemetery. So they didn't see her at the gravesite. So they weren't actually staking out. Like, can you imagine these police just sitting in the car staking out? Not even the gravesite, the cemetery itself.
Yeah.
What are you doing there?
And harassing everybody who walks in and out. Exactly. That's the way I pictured it when I was writing it. I'm like, what?
My dad? Like,
me granny's over there.
What?
Exactly. Like,
and at which point were they grasping this straw?
After the inquest was finished, so we're late in 1959
on the case
now.
anymore.
or like late in 1949. Yeah, they're not even like really on the case. They're just trying to.
So is it like
Yeah.
some gung ho detective who had his spy theory who was like, I'm gonna crack this one, and just starts taking out.
Probably.
And now it's gone on a whole tangent in my head of like, Blair's like, but Peter, you promised once this case was wrapped up, you'd come home to me and the kids. You're drinking every night.
It's the one that got
Sorry,
away.
Barbara. This man needs justice, and I need to see it done.
Yes, very black and white film.
Yes, it's a whole
all of that.
noir. Oh my god, this is an exciting one. Just because of where my head's going.
You understand why I wanted to cover it, because it excites the imagination.
Absolutely. Yes.
So, as I stated earlier, all sorts of analysts and code crackers have tried to decode the lines written in the book. And the final conclusion is that it is more than likely a form of shorthand using initials. Yep. So, like the first letter of each word or something like that. It's not like a true cipher.
I'm sorry, I just had another thought.
Do share.
What if it's like a recipe?
I love that. That would be amazing. After all this time. Recipe. It's just chocolate cake.
Generation to generation. I can't figure it out, it wasn't meant for you.
I'll give you this recipe of my dead body.
Sorry, continue. That.
In 1978, the TV series Inside Story conducted interviews with Boxall and Paul Larson, who made the plaster cast. Boxall, he didn't have anything new to add, but interestingly, Paul Lawson refused to answer the question about whether anyone had identified the man.
Why wouldn't you just say no?
Well, why wouldn't you just say no?
No one did. He's just an attention seeker.
Chief of Justice of the Victorian Institute of Forensic Medicine, John Harbour Phillips, in 1994 reviewed the case and concluded, and I quote, "There is little doubt it was digitalis." End quote.
Yay!
He cited that the organs were engorged as support for his conclusion, but there was a lack of evidence for natural disease. Yep. So there was no signs that the man has heart failure.
Which would not have needed it.
Correct.
Yep.
Former South Australian Chief Superintendent Len Brown, who was on the case back in the 40s, believed that the man was a part of the Warsaw Pact. And the Warsaw Pact is a treaty of a bunch of countries in retaliation to NATO.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, we ain't talking to any NATO nations. We don't release anything to any NATO nations.
It's yeah, everyone got clicks, got it.
Yeah. Which, in his theory, is why they were never able to identify the man.
With us.
Exactly. In 2009, a team of people from Adelaide, led by Professor Derek Abbott, began to try and solve the case again. They started with trying to crack the code. They determined that the flow of the code followed the quatrain format of the Rubaiyat, but without the exact addition used to write the code, they won't get an accurate decryption, so they still can't do anything with it. because the original copy was lost in the 50s. Over the years, most of the evidence and witness statements have been lost or destroyed.
Well, didn't see that coming.
All that's... No, never. All that's left is the bust, the code, and the embalmed body.
Huh. Huh. They still got the body.
Well, it's buried, but they did embalm it.
True. So right, so now all we need is Temperance Brennan, and it'll be solved.
Yeah. Maciej Hanneberg, professor of anatomy at University of Adelaide, examined pictures of the Somerton Man and found a feature in his ear that is only possessed by 1 to 2% of the Caucasian population.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's like, in your ear, like, you've got, like, this inner, like, hole sort of thing, and you've got, like, your upper bit up here, and upper is, like, bigger than here. So it's, like, just, like, that really big friggin' elephant ear, and it's, like, a hole sort of a thing. Yeah. And Abbott consulted dental experts, and they found features that were only present in 2% of the general population. And just for shits and gigs, in 2010, they compared these features to a picture of Jessica Thompson's eldest son, Robin. And he had both of these features as well. The chance of this coincidence is 1 in 10 million and 1 in 20 million for the other.
Still technically better odds than winning the lottery, but yeah.
Robin would have been 16 months old in 1948 when the man died. And media have made the suggestion that he is the child of the son of Somerton Man and was raised as Prosper Thompson's.
Right.
Which Prosper Thompson is Jessica's husband.
Prosper.
I know. I love that name. I would never name my kid that name, but I like that name. So, Derek Abbott ended up marrying Robin's daughter, Rachel, in 2010. This is how close to this case he became whilst working it. And in 2017 made known that they had found usable hairs on the plaster cast, like the dude's bust, that would be suitable for DNA extraction. The DNA was too degraded for a full sample, but they managed to obtain high-definition analysis of mitochondrial DNA.
Right.
But mitochondrial DNA is only passed down maternally, so the sample cannot be used along to compare against Rachel's to determine paternity. In 2013, though, 60 Minutes got interviews with the relatives of Jessica, so this also included her daughter, Kate Thompson. And she stated when interviewed that her mother had told her that she had lied. She did know the man. She also told her daughter that the man's identity was known to a level higher than the police. And that's a quote. Kate hinted that her mother and the man were spies, and she used evidence like her mother taught English to migrants, had an interest in communism, and could speak Russian.
So we're back
as
to Cold War.
That.
Right.
We're back to Cold War. Yeah. And she would never tell her daughter how or why she learned Russian. Finally, the Somerton Man was exhumed in May 2021.
Oh, that was... Wow. Okay.
The intention is to get a usable DNA sample and to try and finally identify him. And as stands, that's where we're at.
Ooh.
I could not get any newer information, but that's pretty darn exciting. They've been fighting, like Derek Abbott has been fighting or asking around to try and get the body exhumed since he started the shit back in 2009.
Wow. I'd call that fighting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow.
Wow.
There were people who were obviously opposed to it, but yeah, they got
So
there.
Russian ballet dancing spy is not actually a terrible idea.
No.
Maybe the pit next to the body with the was a bit off.
Yeah. Well, during the war, and especially during World War II, I don't think there was any ballet going on in Russia.
I would not have a clue. I literally just pulled it out of my ass. Same.
So he would have gone and worked and done something else, and more than likely Red Army, and then go ahead and
it's the whole Black Widow moment.
Acquired skills, like like it's not hard to sort of like throw in a couple of little things and go, yeah, we've got a story here.
Yeah. Damn.
We've got a good cover.
Be interested to see how this turns out.
But the fact that he looked British in appearance, but then,
taken from England as a child.
Mass migration had occurred by this point too, so British in appearance doesn't necessarily mean British native.
No. Wow.
Yeah, I have that whole feeling of lack of closure, but I like the whole whodunit aspect of it.
Yes. I do like theorizing, and I do like playing that game, but I cannot stand not knowing how everything turns out, which is why I never tackle these ones.
I'm so excited that I found out that the body got exhumed, because I've heard of this case before, I've seen it covered before, and that was before the people from Adelaide had started to try and find out what had happened to him.
This is all new to me.
So the work that they've done, the work that they've done over the past just over 10 years, and it hasn't given a lot to the case, but they've managed to at least get the body exhumed to get
the DNA.
Yeah.
Let's say any new leads.
Yeah. But that's all I have for this story this week.
You have to let us know if you get an update.
I was going to say that. If I get updates, I will probably throw it in as a dead set.
Awesome.
So keep your eyes out for that. Hopefully something moves and shakes and all that fun stuff.
Oh, you mean apart from me. Got it.
Every time you move.
Oh.
But until wait, no. If you would like to get in contact with us,
Deets.
Yes, hit us up over on Instagram. We are at Strange Colony 2.0. We are on Twitter at Strange Colony. Or you can hit us up, good old email, strangecolony@gmail.com.
Yep.
Until next week, I love you. Bye-bye.
I love you. Bye-bye.